4 menit gitu ya. Ladies and gentlemen, the next session is going to start in 4 minutes, so please be seated. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? Our session is about to begin, so please have a nice seat. Thank you so much.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to continue our session with keynote speaker, Dr. Insinyur Susyo Iryono, Master of Science, and the session will expertly guided by Donan Satria Yuda, Master of Science.
But before that, I'd like to welcome you to the International Symposium on Wildlife Biodiversity Conservation, and I am deeply honored to serve as your host for this remarkable event, where we come together to explore and address the critical challenges facing our planet's biodiversity. Today, as the host, we are now continuing our meeting to the next agenda, but the true guiding force for our symposium for these sessions will be our distinguished chairpersons, who will be lead us through the session and discussion to follow. But before I introduce our chairpersons, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge and express our gratitude to the organization and sponsors that have made this event possible. We would like to thank our sponsors, which are April Group, GEF or Global Environmental Facility, in partnership with UNDP or United Nations Development Program and combating illegal wildlife trade, Peat and Mangrove Restoration Agency of the Republic of Indonesia, Borneo Nature Foundation, Taprobanica, the Journal of Asians Biodiversity, Flora and Fauna International, Copenhagen Zoo, Kaleka, Action Conservation Foundation, and Pesona Indonesia Tours. We are deeply grateful for their commitment to advancing our shared mission of conserving and protecting the incredible wealth of biodiversity our planet possesses.
And it's a pleasure to introduce our chairperson for this session, Mr. Donan Satria Yuda, Master of Science. Mr. Donan is a lecturer of the Faculty of Biology in University of Gadjah Mada, with the area of expertise, animal behavior, ecology and evolution, zoology, osteology, and taxonomy. So please welcome our chairperson, Mr. Donan. For Mr. Donan, time and place is yours.
Please give us a big applause for him.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. Now let's get started. So without further ado, I would like to welcome our first keynote speaker, Mr. Dr. Insinyur Susetio Iryono, MSc, from Indonesian Ministry of Environment and Forestry, KLHK. And he will present for about 40 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Dr. Insinyur Susetio Iryono, MSc.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat siang teman-teman semua. Senang sekali saya bisa hadir di sini dan memang ini waktu yang saya sempatkan untuk berbagi pengalaman lapangan, Pak. Jadi sehari-harinya saya dan teman-teman yang saya bawa ini ada di garda depan. Jadi saya lebih pengen ada sharing pengalaman mengenai persoalan terutama penegakan hukum dalam peredaran satwa liar di Indonesia khususnya. Teman-teman sekalian, next. Kalau tadi sudah sampaikan oleh Pak Dirjen kami, Pak Rasio Ridosani, mengenai bagaimana begitu dahsyatnya kekayaan alam di Indonesia ini, baik di darat maupun di laut, ya. Dan betapa luasnya kekayaan hutan kita ini, yang terutama sekarang ini yang masih terus mendapatkan gangguan daripada para pelaku-pelaku tindak kejahatan. Teman-teman sekalian, saya baru akan mulai dari hulu. Next. Sekarang ini banyak hal yang di hulu ini belum mendapatkan perhatian yang semestinya, terutama di kawasan-kawasan produksi maupun di lindung. Meskipun juga di konservasi juga ada BKSDA di situ atau KSDA di situ. Ya, jadi saya mulai dari dulu. Kenapa? Terus terang ketika hulunya hancur, pasti berikutnya adalah ke hilir. Ya, kita ingat bahwa dalam pengelolaan kawasan konservasi itu khususnya itu ada namanya pilar perlindungan, pilar pengawetan atau pelestarian alam, dan juga diperkenankan pilar pemanfaatan sesuai dengan undang-undang positif kita. Ya, nah disinilah terjadi harus adanya keseimbangan semuanya di sini. Satu sisi kadang orang butuh adanya pemanfaatan, misalnya sekarang ini wisata dan sebagainya. Satu sisi aspek-aspek perlindungan dan pengawetannya pun kurang. Ini yang harus dijaga betul di hulu ini. Kedua, kita tahu mandat konservasi KKH ini, keaneman hayati ini, yaitu mulai dari ekosistem, spesies, genetik. Saya pikir saya tidak akan terlalu dalam ke sini, saya akan lebih nanti banyak pada pokok-pokok persoalan tindak kejahatan di tumbuhan dan satwa liar. Kebetulan saya sebenarnya sudah purna tugas. Namun demikian saya difungsionalkan dan masih merangkap struktural di Dijen Gakum. Tepatnya di Direktur Pencegahan dan Pengamanan LHK. Gitu. Jadi hampir setiap hari kami bergelut dengan persoalan-persoalan selain TSL ini ya, tumbuhan dan satwa liar, juga persoalan lain yang menyangkut keutuhan kawasan maupun ekosistem. Ya. Peran nanti saya terus next saja ya. Ini kejahatan TSL naik aja nanti ya. Ini saya mencoba kompleksitas kejahatan. Dari pengalaman kami ya, dari hulu sampai hilir itu aktornya macam-macam ya. Dari mulai aktor yang individu, kelompok maupun korporasi, bahkan lintas negara ya. Kemudian modusnya juga macam-macam. Dari mulai bagaimana memperkuat jaringan pengumpul ya, sampai dengan jaringan lain yang ada di hilir. Nanti akan saya ceritakan bagaimana terjadinya tindak kejahatan dan bagaimana persoalan ini tidak kunjung mereda gitu. Kemudian tentunya mengganggu ekosistem dan mungkin kerugian daripada negara dan sekaligus menghilangkan kewibawaan daripada negara. Sehingga kami di Gakum ini tentunya harus beradaptasi dengan persoalan-persoalan itu. Saya mencoba untuk menarasikan bagaimana pelaku kejahatan ini melakukan tindak kejahatan dari hulu sampai hilir. Kita tahu bahwa dalam sistem sosial ya, itu ada yang namanya sistem sosial sendiri dalam tindak kejahatan maupun sistem sosial dalam tata kelola ini. Nah, ini saya gambarkan ini ya, bahwa masing-masing pelaku maupun dalam konstelasinya maupun dalam aspek pengurusannya ya, itu ada semacam kalau kita ingat pelajaran biologi di SMA ya, bahwa kejahatan itu selalu membentuk sel-sel begitu dan beradaptasi terus. Dia membelah ya, dari kelompok ini menjadi kelompok ini, terus yang berasal dari elemennya itu sendiri gitu. Sehingga tindak kejahatan ini juga mengaruhi ya. Kita lihat next ya. kita lihat yang namanya interpenetrasi dari masing-masing konstelasi sistem sosial itu sendiri ya. Dari baik dari sistem birokrasinya sendiri, sistem tindak kejahatan sendiri, itu selalu interpenetrasi dengan kode binernya untung dan tidak untung, aman dan tidak aman. Ya, inilah yang setiap tindak kejahatan selalu beradaptasi dengan misalnya kalau negara membuat satu keputusan begini, dia akan beradaptasi. Bagaimana dia mensiasati aturan itu, ya, dan bagaimana dia mengaruhi birokrasi ini dengan kode tadi untung dan untung, interpretasi. Dan kebetulan memang birokrasi kita memang belum terlalu kuat lah. Gitu. Dari pengalaman kami, ya, banyak simpul-simpul yang titik lemah gitu ya. Misalnya contoh yang baru kami bongkar adalah jaringan sisik terenggiling. Saya bongkar jaringan ini pertama kerjasama dengan Bea Cukai di Banjarmasin. Setelah melalui pengalaman-pengalaman lama. Kemudian kita juga coba untuk adaptasi dengan teknologi lah. Alhamdulillah jaringan di Kalimantan, Banjarmasin khususnya itu ternyata terkait sampai ke Sumatera, sampai ke Jawa, ya. Dan itu selalu dengan transnasional gitu. Demikian juga satwa yang lain. Baru-baru ini juga dalam waktu dekat akan saya bongkar juga jaringan-jaringan yang ada di primata yang ada di kita, termasuk orangutan dan bekantan ini. Ini juga transnasional. Dan orang-orang kita dari mulai hulu hilir banyak terinterpenetrasi dengan tadi itu kode untung dan tidak untung, aman dan tidak aman itu. Ya, itu yang saya alami di lapangan ya. Ya. Kemudian lanjut. Jadi tadi ya terorganisir ya lintas negara dan menggunakan teknologi informasi, bahkan juga membuat rekening-rekening bersama ya. Dan kadang juga sekarang ini mereka memanfaatkan yang penting, yang mencuri genetik, tidak hanya harus satwa, entitas satwanya sendiri gitu. Susahnya ya, kita ini belum secara penuh adanya sinergitas antar aparat penegak hukum. Nanti kan akan cerita ya. Terus kesadaran masyarakat sendiri juga menurun ya, tidak memuaskan ya. Dan permintaan pasar sangat tinggi. Mungkin hitungan daripada Bank Dunia itu mungkin nomor 2 setelah narkoba, sekitar triliunan lah gitu ya. Ya ini yang menjadi tantangan kita ya. Sementara kita juga punya kapasitas sumber daya yang belum sepenuhnya bisa mencoba untuk mengantisipasi maupun dan bahkan pengalaman kami Undang-Undang nomor 5 ini juga beberapa ada kendala ya, baik mengenai penindakan di lapangan. Misalnya kita harus sebagai undang-undang tidak belum mandiri, harus mengajak sprint cup-nya, sprint bahannya harus dengan polisi. Jadi dari kita tidak bisa mandiri. Ya, ini yang insya Allah undang-undang ini akan sedang segera direvisi yang akan nanti menjadi undang-undang yang mandiri. Satu lagi yang menjadi persoalan adalah sekarang ini juga tidak hanya mengumpulkan entitas satuannya sendiri, juga ada yang namanya pembuatan konten-konten penyiksaan terhadap satwa. Ya, kami kemarin dengan Amerika diminta untuk menindaklanjuti penyiksaan satwa ini yang ada di Banyuwangi, Tasikmalaya, bahkan di Magelang ada. Ini dibayar mahal. Satu konten penyiksaan misalnya primata kera ya, dipotong, disiksa, jadikan film. Tidak hanya entitas satuannya sendiri. Ini yang sedang berkembang ini. Ya. Kemudian ini juga memanfaatkan teknologi media sosial ya, dan ini tentunya menjadi tantangan kita sendiri ya. Kemudian kami coba untuk adaptasi, akan ceritakan di belakang ya. Saya coba gambarkan next ya. Berdasarkan pengalaman peta peredaran TSL ilegal ya. Ya, ini dari Indonesia, khususnya Jakarta, Surabaya dan sebagainya, langsung bisa ke Cina, bisa ke Jerman, Rusia dan sebagainya, tergantung jenis satuannya. Kebanyakan larinya ke Vietnam, Hong Kong, Malaysia, dan sebelum ke yang lain. Gitu. Tergantung satuannya. Misalnya kalau orangutan itu bisa ke Rusia, kadang-kadang ke Jerman, ada satwa lagi yang lain. Kemudian beberapa yang disukai oleh mafia-mafia di sana, khususnya reptil ini yang ini ya. Kemudian jalur ini satwa yang ilegal mengenai lokasi misalnya burung ya. Ya, itu kebanyakan di Timur Tengah ya satwa ini. Kemudian yang aneh-aneh lagi juga ya, yang menjadi permintaan dari luar negeri. Jalurnya sudah kita identifikasi semua ya, dari mulai Papua khususnya ya, Papua, Maluku, ini yang misalnya burung nih. Kemudian ke Surabaya dengan berbagai jalan kan gitu ya. Nah ini kemudian ini yang di dalam negeri sendiri ya. Kita lihat sumber-sumber ya. Kita ini dari paling banyak sekarang ini adalah dari Papua, Sumatera, kemudian Maluku ini dari sumber ya, khususnya burung, reptil dan sebagainya, lari ke Surabaya, ke Jakarta, bahkan nanti bisa ke Medan langsung ke luar negeri. Ini jalur-jalur satwa yang kalau di sini di timur kita juga sudah identifikasi yang jalurnya di Bitung ke Filipina juga ada juga ya. Yang ini yang kita identifikasi semuanya ya. Kemudian modusnya macam-macam ya. Ada yang pakai botol aqua, kardus, kandang khusus, dan itu selalu beroperasi ini. Kemudian jalur udara juga demikian. Inilah gambaran peredaran ini, pasti ada yang terpenetrasi dari mulai hulu sampai hilir, sampai dari Humber bisa ke luar negeri dan sebagainya. Sehingga nanti bagaimana kita coba untuk berkolaborasi caranya untuk menekan ini semua. Teman-teman, saya gambarkan ini jalur-jalur yang kita identifikasi. Kemudian kami di Gakum punya mandat beberapa undang-undang. Kalau satwa jelas Undang-Undang 5, insya Allah nanti segera direvisi ya. Kemudian undang-undang yang lain, undang-undang pengelolaan dan kemudian yang sekarang ini juga kita coba pakai undang-undang pencucian uang untuk beberapa bandar-bandar yang gede ini. Coba gitu ya. Nah ini yang tentunya kita harus berusaha semaksimal mungkin bagaimana menghadapi situasi ini. Teman-teman, saya coba untuk tadi saya ngomong persoalan bagaimana menghadapi sistem sosial kejahatan yang autopoiesis itu yang selalu membelah. Ini terutama kita tentunya harus berkolaborasi, terutama dalam ekosistem penegakan hukum. Pertama mungkin kita harus mulai kolaborasi dengan banyak pihak lah. Dari hulu ya, misalnya kita harus dengan bea cukai, dengan karantina, dengan teman-teman dari pelabuhan, KSOP dan juga dari pihak-pihak yang lain yang tentunya nanti kolaborasi inilah yang barangkali nanti kita ini mencoba untuk menghadapi situasi yang demikian ini ya, yang harapannya dengan kolaborasi ini kita bisa melakukan memberantas paling minimal menurunkan tindak kejahatan yang ada di Indonesia ini. Kalau sendiri-sendiri tidak akan mungkin terjadi itu. Ya. Ya tentunya dalam kolaborasi ini kita harus ada kesepahaman bersama ya tentunya ya. Kemudian bagaimana kita tujuan ya, terus siapa yang menjadi inisiatifnya, kemudian kepemimpinan atau drivernya, dan tentunya sumber-sumber daya yang lain yang saya pikir kita menuju ke sana. Menuju ke sana, bagaimana kita mencoba menghadapi situasi ini. Dan ini sudah berhasil juga. Kita dengan bea cukai sudah semakin erat, dengan karantina juga semakin erat. Meskipun kadang-kadang di meja hijau atau pengadilan putusannya juga belum memuaskan juga, ya. Tapi ini nanti akan terus ke sana. Bagaimana memperkuat semuanya ini, jaringan-jaringan ini. Kemudian upaya-upaya yang kita lakukan tadi, ya, yang menghadapi situasi yang demikian, yaitu pengembangan sistem, ya. Kita mulai mengembangkan sistem intelijen, kemudian memperkuat pengawasan maupun penindakan di lapangan, kemudian kita juga mengembangkan checkpoint. Saya masih punya keinginan bagaimana border gate kita juga bisa kita awasi bersama gitu. Karena terus terang inilah pintu-pintu keluar maupun masuknya satwa itu. Ini yang perlu kami sampaikan. Kemudian beberapa operasi yang kita lakukan bisa menunjukkan bahwa kita semakin tahun, alhamdulillah, baik lewat medsos maupun lewat terestrial darat, ya, maupun laut udara, kita sudah mulai tutup pintu-pintu itu dan rasanya ya tidak seperti dulu lah. Ya, mudah-mudahan dengan apalagi dengan adanya bantuan proyek dari CEWT ini cukup membuat kita leluasa untuk melakukan penindakan di lapangan. Gitu. Highlights, ya, kemarin kami terakhir kami dengan Mantamal TNI AL juga sudah bisa mengamankan beberapa satwa, kemudian dengan bea cukai, dengan Polda dan sebagainya, dan terakhir kami lanjut kita di Ujung Kulon bisa mencoba mengamankan atau menertibkan paling tidak 400 pucuk senjata rakitan. Bayangkan, ya, di Ujung Kulon ada 400 senjata rakitan yang ini semua mengarah pada satu kondisi kawasan konservasi yang benar-benar di situ ada satwa yang endemis yang paling langka gitu. Ini yang terakhir kami lakukan. Dan insya Allah ke depan kami coba perkuat di hulu juga dari operasi jerat dan sebagainya, ya. Kemudian kita tadi sampaikan cyber patrol. Karena dengan medsos kami coba setiap hari kami coba tugaskan orang untuk memonitor jaringan medsos dari mulai Facebook, dulu ada Kaskus, Tokopedia, dan yang lain. Kemudian kita coba untuk minta ke Menfo untuk take down konten-konten itu. Kemudian ada juga hasil itu kita ekstrak juga, ya. Kemudian kita profiling dan kita juga penindakan di lapangan. Itu teman-teman hasil patroli cyber kita sangat signifikan dan terakhir minggu kemarin kita amankan kulit harimau, kemudian beberapa satwa yang dilindungi di Jakarta dan Bekasi, dan tentunya di wilayah juga bekantan dan satwa-satwa lain yang kalau orang hutan kemarin juga kita lakukan di Medan gitu. Jadi teman-teman, intinya, ya, kita juga akan mengarahkan bersama, ya. Intinya bagaimana kita menjalin kolaborasi termasuk dengan para penggiat lapangan. Misalnya tadi saya bertemu dengan teman-teman aktivis, ya, yang ini sangat memperkuat. Misalnya kalau Pak Yudi, Pak siapa tadi itu, Pak Arif, ya, yang bergiat baluran, besok rapat dengan kami bagaimana kita bisa menyelamatkan lah kawasan-kawasan yang ada di hulu ini. Misalnya kalau baluran ini kan lambangnya banteng yang gede, sehat gitu. Tapi kalau kita tidak bisa menurunkan perburuan secara signifikan, pasti ujungnya adalah kepunahan. Jadi tidak banyak yang concern terhadap ini, ya. mungkin banyak yang sekarang concern terhadap tambang, sawit dan sebagainya. Dan saya terima kasih pada teman-teman penggiat yang masih militan di lapangan untuk melindungi satwa-satwa liar ini yang semuanya kita juga belum tahu terungkap apa manfaatnya selain daripada entitas itu sendiri. Padahal banyak lah. Kalau kita ngomong bioperasi gitu ya, kita belum sampai ke sana. Kita masih jauh ya, masih melindungi kawasan ini susah sekali. Belum hanya satu yang kelihatan ya, kita bisa memanfaatkan Festus untuk vaksin polio. Baru itu aja yang benar-benar diproduksi oleh Indonesia. Kita misalnya orang digigit ular itu masih perlu serum dari Australia. Padahal kita banyak sekali kalau kita bisa ini. Yang ini yang masih menjadi mimpi. Bagaimana kekayaan alam ini bisa kita manfaat secara maksimal dan menjadi high tech, menggunakan high tech lah. Jangan hanya dijual murah itu. Sekarang kan dijual murah banyak. Ya. Itu teman-teman yang mungkin nanti diskusi lebih banyak, Pak. Terima kasih. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, thank you for Dr. Insinyur Sustio Iryono MSc for this informative and interesting talk. Now we come to discussion time. We have maybe 10 minutes for discussion time. Is there any question or maybe? Okay, Pak Subeno.
Ya, terima kasih. Pak, bahasa Indonesia saja ya. Karena Pak Sus juga bahasa Indonesia, saya menghormati beliau. Terima kasih atas waktunya, Mas Moderator. Begini Pak Sus, memang kasus biopirasi ini sangat menarik ya, tentunya bagi negara selatan-selatan yang kebetulan adalah negara berkembang dan punya biodiversitas yang sangat tinggi sekali. Saya pernah baca buku tulisannya aktivis NGO di India, itu cukup lama bukunya, itu tahun 2000 kalau nggak salah. Bahwa memang biopirasi ini sebenarnya seperti kayak hidden agenda atau rencana terselubung, di mana salah satu tujuan yang akan dicapai adalah terjadinya perpindahan material genetik dari negara-negara selatan ke negara utara, dari negara berkembang, negara maju, di mana tidak ada hukum transnasional yang bisa untuk mengatasi. Dan di kita kayaknya sering deh ini terjadi. Dulu yang sempat gempar adalah air liur Komodo ya Pak Sus ya, yang sempat ramai dulu 100 tabung yang dibawa oleh orang Itali itu juga tidak ada penyelesaiannya. Terus kemudian yang terakhir zamannya saya menyeret Bu Menteri Kesehatan Siti Fadila Supari untuk vaksin avian influenza atau apa itu yang bahkan beliau yang terseret hanya gara-gara memprotes bahwa seharusnya adil dong sampel dari kita tapi begitu jadi vaksin kita suruh beli. Nah itu saya kira sangat banyak lagi yang lain, termasuk dulu waktu saya juga kebetulan ikut dengan teman-teman LSM di Taman Mini Pak, sebelum Desman Pak Jokowi sekarang, sudah cukup lama. Ada upaya untuk menarik pemindahan material genetik dari offset yang ada di Taman Mini Indonesia Indah, di Taman Burung ke Belanda dengan jaminan biaya waktu itu adalah dikasih 6 juta gulden saat itu, tahun 2002 kalau nggak salah ya. Artinya ini adalah upaya yang memang sebetulnya menunjukkan adanya realitas terjadi biopirasi, yang mana saya kok percaya tulisan aktivis India ini agak mendekati kebenaran. Jadi terjadi pemindahan tanpa ada hukum transnasional yang bisa untuk menghalangi. Nah ini mungkin saya ingin tanya, langkah-langkah apa dari pihak pemerintah, terutama ini adalah dari Gakum, terutama khususnya adalah Kementerian KLHK ya, untuk mengantisipasi atau mereduksi peristiwa ini, karena ini sangat luar biasa, di mana kalau terus terang saja, saya dulu pernah tinggal di Jerman itu sangat kaget Pak Sus, karena mereka punya rumah kaca ya, bukan efek rumah kaca, yang isinya adalah sudah 75% tanaman flora dari negara tropis. Jadi kita sebetulnya nanti disetting dalam benak saya itu, ini betul disetting nanti sekian tahun lagi ketika jenis-jenis tropis tidak ada, maka kita akan bergantung pada mereka yang bisa mengelola dalam kondisi musim yang sangat ekstrim dengan kita. Jadi mungkinkah ini akan diantisipasi seperti apa sehingga anak cucu kita ke depan tadi kayaknya dengan pemanfaatan itu masih bisa menikmati seperti kita di saat ini. Saya kira demikian, terima kasih atas tanggapannya Pak Sustio.
Terima kasih. Langsung saja Pak Susutyo, monggo.
Mohon izin, Mas Subeno ya. Nggih. Terima kasih Mas. Jadi Anda punya mimpi yang sama dengan saya. Ya. Jadi saya kalau ke lapangan ini kadang-kadang sedih lah. Teman-teman yang dipercaya untuk mengawal ini kayaknya belum paham bagaimana kita kayanya kita. Dan artinya potensi-potensi itu yang belum diungkap dia nggak melihat gitu loh. Ya. Kebetulan saya berkesempatan di beberapa lokasi, saya di Komodo 5 tahun Mas. Itu yang saya marah betul sebelum saya itu Pak, kejadian darah di bawah itu. Marah betul saya itu. Dan kemudian saya kemudian juga di Jawa Barat. Wah ini pusatnya banyak hidden agenda di situ Pak. Yang itu ya. Jadi betul Mas. Kalau kita ini kadang-kadang terlalu kaya sih ya. Kalau orang kaya itu nggak open gitu loh. Lain kalau kita orang sederhana ya, tidak kaya pasti open gitu loh. Ya toh? Karena terlalu kaya jadi nggak pernah open. Dan susahnya meskipun kita intelek, kadang-kadang tidak sampai ke sana pikirannya Mas. Ya, banyaklah. Ya, saya mohon maaf ya Mas ya. Kenapa saya sangat concern ya dalam hal TSL dan lain-lain. Kan terus terang banyak kecolongan lah kita. Nah, padahal kekayaan kita ini dahsyat sekali. Mungkin ke depan kalau penyakit apapun pasti ada jawabannya di situ. Lah ini harus diungkap ini. Saya terus terang banggalah dengan teman-teman yang masih militan di lapangan lah. Mas itu Dwi ya, ini teman saya setia ini. Yang selalu mendampingi saya gitu. Dulu musuhan dengan saya Pak. Saya kepala balai, beliau tidak komunikasi dengan saya. Ya, tapi senang juga saya. Akhirnya korbannya anak buah saya. Tapi anak buah saya bersih lah, yang nakal-nakal maksudnya. Ya, dan Mas Wi tahu lah bagaimana komitmen saya gitu. Ya, jadi betul Mas. Jadi teman-teman langkah-langkah kami, teman-teman saya berharap betul. Tolong teman-teman dikawal ya. Revisi Undang-Undang Nomor 5 ini. Dikawal betul sampai genetik. Ya. Dan khusus Mas Dwi ya, saya tetap pesan dengan Bapak karena Bapak komunikasi dengan teman-teman yang mengurus tata kelolanya ya. Saya terus terang kadang-kadang mengeluh Pak. Gakum itu selalu menerima residu daripada tata kelola yang tidak tuntas. Gitu. Sakit saya kadang-kadang. Saya kadang-kadang juga suka bercanda lah. Kalau nggak bisa memberikan dirjennya saya aja deh. Kadang-kadang gitu. Karena kan nggak sabar gitu. Orang ini kok nggak paham betul betapa ini sangat berharga gitu. Dibandingkan sawit sekian hektar dengan vaksin itu botol jauh harganya daripada. Nah, ini. Anda bisa jual sawit berton-ton, tapi kalau dengan vaksin itu jauh. Jadi undang-undang ya. Kemudian saya berharap kedua teman-teman jangan bosan ya. Harus cerewet memang. Harus cerewet. Kemudian yang ketiga adalah kolaborasi tadi Mas. Kolaborasi saya ada sistem kontaknya juga, ada drivernya juga. Saya berharap ke depan ya, kita masih mampu menahan bagaimana kekayaan alam kita sudah tahan lah gitu. Ya, artinya dari hulu sampai hilir kita harus bisa menjaga semuanya. Saya sangat ingin Pak Dwi, semua border gate kita dari mulai di Bengkalis ya, Kalimantan ada beberapa pintu ya, kemudian sampai di Papua sana itu ada teman-teman yang bisa menjaga lah gitu. Paling tidak namun demikian Bapak tahu lah ya, karena kita ini belum paham betul manfaatnya dan nilainya, kadang-kadang dianggap enteng aja gitu. Dan susahnya Mas, saya nggak menjelekan ya, selalu dukungan pembiayaan untuk pengelolaan KSDA ini rendah sekali. Ini menjadi kendala betul. Saya kadang-kadang jengkel ya, kasihan juga dengan teman-teman KSDA ini Pak. Jengkelnya kok kalian ini jadi kepala balai kok nggak punya passion ke lapangan, karena memang nggak ada duitnya Pak. Itu ya. Jadi itu Mas kira-kira yang kuncinya adalah nanti kolaborasi Pak. Beberapa terjadilah. Pak Dwi sebentar lagi saya buka jaringan orang hutan itu. Saya bongkar dari Sumatera sampai ini. Bekantan juga. Jangan salah nanti kalau Vietnam punya bekantan. Ya. Jadi saya udah handus semua. Cuman mudah-mudahan kalau saya sudah tua ada pengganti saya yang lebih militan lah gitu. Kalau sisi Renggiling kami sudah semua kan Pak. Bentar lagi yang bekantan ini kita bongkar. Ya. Dan itu dahsyat Pak. Mungkin kalau saya cerita ya, banyak oknum-oknum terlibat juga. Gitu. Maskapai juga yang terlibat. Ya. Artinya kolaborasi inilah yang kuncinya nanti Pak. Aturan-aturan kesepahaman. Meskipun ada impresnya sudah ada. Dari Pak Jokowi kan kemarin impres KKH sudah muncul kan gitu. Cuman kan itu masan kertas gitu. Kalau drivernya nggak ada gitu. Itu Mas Beno. Jadi kalau saya mau dongeng banyak, makanya saya bingung mau mulai dari mana saya mau cerita gitu. Karena saya banyak satu case yang dengan Pak Dwi itu bisa kita ceritakan macam-macam gitu loh. Ya, jadi saya pesan teman-teman yang masih bergiat ini jangan bosan-bosan lah ya. Harus tetap bermilitan gitu. Satu sisi ya, orang-orang utara itu pintar sekali Mas. Bagaimana istilah saya penetrasi terhadap semua simpul dari Sabtu Hilir. Ya, saya kemarin bongkar yang di Jungkulon, saya selalu menandai, bila sesuatu kawasan itu tidak ada selesai persoalannya, pasti ada pengkhianat di dalam. Betul, di situ ada oknum yang berkhianat, ada juga mantan pegawainya di situ yang menjadi dia tahu kubangannya di mana. Ya, jadi saya pesan teman-teman kalau misalnya memperkerjakan orang-orang desa itu ya, benar-benar dirawat baik-baik lah, jangan diputus tengah jalan. Karena itu yang dia menjadi informan di lapangan gitu loh. Di mana kubangannya, bagaimana munculnya, jam berapa munculnya, tahu persis dia. Hati-hati. Jadi memperkerjakan orang-orang yang di kampung itu juga tidak mudah gitu. Justru nanti berbalik, kamu didik baik-baik tapi masih ketika pintar dia membandingkan nilainya. Gitu. Nilainya gitu. Dan itu dari bagaimana sistem selnya tadi terjadi autopoiesis tadi Pak, sel-sel itu, dan beradaptasi dengan aturan apapun. Ya, yang terakhir Pak Dwi, saya memimpikan Pak Beno satu sistem yang terintegrasi. Saya kalau ngomong gini orang-orang KSDA marah Pak Dwi, bener nggak? Zaman dulu saya masih bikin sistem aja nggak bisa, sedih saya. Terintegrasi dan juga bagaimana mengurangi tangkapan alam. Tangkapan alam itu juga nggak paham angkanya dari mana gitu loh. Inventarisasi juga nggak pernah gitu. Bener nggak? Nih, ini untuk ruang di sini ya. Ya, jadi masih panjang Mas Beno ya, Mas Dwi ya. Tolong kita sama-sama kompak lah. Ya. Jadi banyak hal yang kalau saya buka satu-satu nggak selesai ceritanya Pak. Masing-masing punya uniqueness sendiri gitu. Ya, masing-masing side gitu. Demikian Mas, terima kasih.
Okay, thank you.
Kalau ada pertanyaan lagi saya senang lagi.
Okay, but I'm sorry, unfortunately the time is up for this session. We have to close this first topic, and please give applause to Dr. Sustio Irianto and for us. Okay, next for our second topic, I would like to welcome Mr. Dwi Nugroho Adiasto MA from Wildlife Conservation Society. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Dwi Nugroho Adiasto. You have 20 minutes for presentation. The floor is yours.
Bahasa Indonesia apa Inggris ini? Jauh. Oke, thank you. Terima kasih atas for the time ya. So today in the afternoon I will try to explain more about our activities ya with the government of Indonesia, Ministry of Environment and Forestry, to address wildlife trafficking in Indonesia and also neighboring countries. So basically the presentation is based on our papers already published in January 2023. So maybe you can show So this is the introduction, Maybe Pak Sus already really understand what that crime actually happens if there's a motivated offenders and there's a suitable target and in unguarded location. So that's the key, So as long as there's no a capable guardian, there is a suitable target, tiger, elephant, rhino, and also there is motivated offenders, then crime is happen. So crime never stop as long as three of that still exists in the ground. Next. So these are our paper. So this is a collaboration between WCS and KLHK. Next. So Pak Sus already mentioned that wildlife trafficking actually huge number of wildlife trafficking in international and Indonesia. So this is a major challenge for wildlife protections, and also consists of organized crime and organized criminal groups. And also the thing that actually we need to know is increasing the certainty of apprehensions will create deterrence rather than severity of punishment. So as we know that all of us actually try to improve to raise the number of sentence from 5 years in prison to more than 5 years in prisons. But as long as there's no fairly sentence in the ground, people still think that, okay, I just unlucky if the officer arrests me in the ground, then it means that deterrence is not created. So as long as the law enforcement officer, they try to do the same thing to the traffickers, then it will create certainty of punishment and justice. And Indonesia actually have a clear framework, even like we understand that like regulation number 5, actually there are some gaps and now still try to revise, but actually Indonesia already have a comprehensive framework, and it's quite easy to the government of the officers to implement the regulations. But some barriers are already there, like limited capacity of law enforcement officers, and also how to map wildlife trafficking networks, and also talking about prosecution and major poacher and traffickers. So we need to target key traffickers and also poacher, for example. And also we try to assess the intervention between government and also stakeholders, since 2003. So actually, I work for WCS since 2003 to last years. So we have comprehensive data from the ground, about wildlife trafficking. Next. So we use 5 years data set to assess the performance of multi-stakeholders approach to monitor and also mitigate wildlife trafficking. And also we try to collect court cases, penal codes from all of the cases in Indonesia, mostly already sentenced by the court. And also we target high priority biodiversity sites like national parks, and also protected species like tigers, elephant, pangolins, and also some protected birds like helmeted hornbills. And our study actually not focused on the unsustainable legal trade or illegal trade in non-protected species. So we just focus on the protected species. Next. And you can see in the diagram that in the top of the diagram, so in the beginning, in 2004, actually, the effort of protecting the protected species happens by confiscating live animals. Thousands of live animals already confiscated from the owners, illegal owners. But still, the crime still happens. Many people still keep protected wildlife in their home. And then the strategy changed. from confiscating many thousands of live animals to conduct law enforcement activities like arrest the perpetrators and also send them to the jail and also giving fines. And you can see since in 2015, actually the number of cases in eastern part of Indonesia also increased. This is a good news, yeah, because since 2004 to 2011, mostly the cases happens in central and eastern western part of Indonesia. Because what? Because there's a key species like tigers, elephant, rhino there, and in eastern Indonesia only parrots, yeah. So people still think that parrots not important like tigers. So that's why at the times the focus of law enforcement happens in the eastern part and also central part of Indonesia. But now already similar between western to eastern. Now the law enforcement officer, they conduct the same thing, try to address wildlife trafficking in all areas of Indonesia. And also this the same thing like the species, yeah. So from the beginning 2004, every year almost provinces in Indonesia, mostly in Sumatra and also Java, they can handle Sumatran tiger cases, yeah. But now since 2012, yeah, the number of operation addressing parrots in eastern Indonesia that increased. So it means that the government now try to improve and try to focus more than not only tiger, elephant, rhino, but also protected species, other protected species like parrots, bekantan, like Pak Sus mentioned, and also other species in eastern Indonesia. Next. One thing. So if we see this diagram, we also see that in the beginning, actually the confiscation letter actually happens many times, yeah. So the government, they confiscate live animals, and then the owners, the government, they give confiscation letter. But now since 2012, the number of prosecution and sentence by handled by court actually increased also. So not only delivering confiscated letter, but also sending the prisoners to the jail. Yeah. So this combination between soft approach and also hard approach like law enforcement activities. Next. So you can see here also the effectiveness of the sentence. So when we assess 376 cases, so around 80% of the cases actually already sentenced. So it means that most of the cases actually finished, yeah, already sentenced. This is good news. If we compare to 2003, there's no even single one case sentenced in Indonesia. But now, every year, more than 200 cases. Yeah. So this big achievement, but also a big challenge for us, yeah, because we understand that okay, the crimes still happen there. We still try to reach the top of the crimes, yeah, until we understand, we know that okay, we success to reduce the crime. Next. Yeah, so we try to analyze the data, yeah. So we use linear regression, also we investigate temporal opposition between case handling, and also we try to focus on the targeted and also key species like tiger, parrots, and also turtles. Next. Yeah, so over 15 years, so we compile around 390 cases, and we also identified 228 unique species or species group like turtles and parrots, and also we identified 64.9% actually protected species, national protected species, which is illegally to be treated. And around 170 species actually already mentioned in IUCN Red List as a critically endangered 10% and also endangered 15%. And also most of the cases since 2003 to 2018 mostly dominated by tigers, yeah, parrots, and also turtles and Sunda pangolins. Yeah, Sunda pangolin actually increased the cases since the first case of Sunda pangolin actually happened in 2008 when 13.8 tons of pangolin already confiscated by government in South Sumatra, and then following being another cases. Next. Yeah, and this is the result. So we understand that the number of cases actually significantly raised or improved, in the field, with the number of the teams and also the officers. So it means that when we deploy the officer as many as we can, then we can get many cases. So as long as we not deploy the team in the ground, we don't have any cases. Yeah, that's the point. And the majority of the cases actually trade. Yeah, what I've did, like Pak Sus mentioned, why Gakum always confiscate and arrest people in the exit point, transit point, because lack of protection in the ground. Yeah, so they will get the animals continuously. And talking about online trade, so we detect online trade in 2011, the first case of online trade, and then but now they manage the majority of the cases actually online trade. So this the new threat of the modus operandi of wildlife trafficking using online case. Online trade actually easy to detect but difficult to reveal. Yeah, so that's why we need to have a good technology to reveal the online trafficking. And also there's a shifting strategy, yeah, from delivering administrative punishment to the sending the prisoner, sending the perpetrator to the jail and also giving fines. Yeah. Next. And okay, yeah. So if we see, yeah, that around 60% of the case actually processed to the court, and also 80% receive prison and fine for now, and now getting better, yeah, because it's already assessed from 2003 to 2018, and now getting better. And also the thing that actually we need to know that the average sentence for the trafficker actually around 12 months. Yeah. Even we have 5 years maximum in prison, but actually the average of the sentence actually only 12 months. Yeah. So we need to think whether we need to raise the the number of punishment, the number of sentence, because actually in the reality the average of the sentence only 12 months. Yeah. So this is too far from the regulation. But I do agree about the increasing the fines. Yeah, the fines for wildlife trafficking actually around $7,500 US. But for the pangolin exporter, they can get million US dollar for illegally sending the pangolin. So this is not relevant about the fines for the regulation number 5. Yeah, and the sentence actually depend on the province, years, yeah, of arrest, and also unique protected species. Like I mentioned before, mostly the tiger traffickers, they get around 3 or 4 or even 5 years in prison. But for parrots, they just less than 1 year. Yeah, because most of the prosecutor, the judges, they just think that this just birds, yeah, not tigers. So that's why in East Java, Maluku, West Nusa Tenggara, the trafficker, they receive lower than other criminals in Western and also in Central Indonesia. And yeah, so the average sentence actually increased for key species. Yeah, next. Yeah, it is about the collaboration between government and stakeholders. Yeah, so since 2004, actually the involvement of NGOs actually have a long history with the government. Yeah, so the NGOs actually they conduct gathering information, yeah, intelligent information, and then send to the government, and then government will respond after they verify the information. And it happens right now, until now. But if you can see here that the effort of the government to do by themselves now increase. Yeah, so they can manage the investigation, they can manage the operation, they can manage to handle the case without NGO or other partners intervention. This is good news because what? Because this government activities, this government authority, yeah, not a civil society authority. So in the future, we hope, yeah, our dream, the government will strong, yeah, to handle wildlife trafficking, yeah, with less of NGO or other stakeholders involvement in that process. Yeah. Next. Yeah. So yes, so this is the same explanation, and also actually, if you talk about wildlife trafficking, the Ministry of Environment and Forestry actually the most active partners, yeah, from the beginning, from gathering information to the providing witness, providing evidence, and also assisting other partners to do legal process. Yeah. Next. So this is about discussion. So our study actually demonstrate the good relationship between government and also stakeholders to combat wildlife trafficking, and also replicate the teams, yeah, collaboration to other areas actually important, and it also show the success story. So for example, like in Maluku, in Papua, yeah, there are some partners, NGO working with the government, providing intelligent information. Then it will create good cases in the end, yeah. And also, yeah. So next, yeah. Yeah, so this is the thing that actually become our good discussion that about the illegal keeping, yeah, because in the future, many years ago, so the keeping protected animal actually is not a serious crime. So that's why the owner already give confiscation letters, but it still it will drive the poaching of protected animals, yeah, because the severe punishment already happens in the poaching and also the middleman, but not in addressing the illegal owners. And yeah, right. Okay, next, yeah. Yeah, okay, same time, same things. Okay, yeah. So we need to make sure that in other locations like eastern part of Indonesia also the same investment with central and also western part of Indonesia to make sure that the intervention actually similar to other areas. Yeah, and also we can understand that the higher sentence, yeah, for a high priority species actually happen in Sumatra and Java, and actually it show the conservation action attention, yeah, afforded to the species, yeah, that and give good influence to the species. Next. Yeah, this is a recommendation. So actually, we understand all of that. Yeah, so we need to in the near future we need to conduct various crime prevention, not only patrol, not only protecting the gates, but also other activities like roadblocks, for example, deploying a wildlife detection dog in the cargo areas, for example, yeah, and conduct continuously joining trainings, publicizing successful convictions like media, yeah, publications, and also target to the high-risk individuals or criminals, and also try to reveal the criminal network by having a good technology, yeah, to reveal the networks, yeah, digital forensic, wildlife forensic, something like that, and also conduct research, yeah, to understand more and further about the motivation of the traffickers to conduct wildlife trafficking, awareness of punishment risk, and also sanction to reduce criminal behavior, and also whether the sentence actually counterproductive because they inadvertently radicalize the offenders. Okay, I think that's it. Yeah. Next. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pak Dwi Sedi. Please, you can sit over there. You can sit on the sofa, please. Okay. Okay, thank you, Pak Dwi Sedi, for the interesting talk. Is there any questions? Yes, please. Anunya, Mas.
Thank you for the opportunity, Iwan from UNDP. Actually, the question is also related with Pak Sustio. Even though we have met every time, Pak, yeah, and we have discussed, but I always learn from him. Yeah. Yeah, the question is related, or I interested with the driver of the illegal wildlife trade. In the previous presentation, mentioning about the bureaucracy pathology. I think this is the one aspect that we would like to, or all of us agree that we would like to remove this barrier. So from your point of view as well as Dr. Sustio, of course, actually what is how we can remove this barrier, and also what is actually the challenging in dealing with this bureaucracy pathology. Thank you.
Nanti walet.
Sampai dulu. Kan nanti kalau saya dari dalam kan.
Ini tentang birokrasi saya, Pak.
Sampai yang lihat dari birokrasi. Terima kasih Pak Iwan. Ini Pak Iwan pura-pura, padahal bisa setiap hari ke saya. Mas Iwan, kami selalu berusaha ya. Memang tindak kejahatan ini bisa menembus saluran darah ya kemana-mana. Jadi, kami tentunya mengidentifikasi simbol-simbol titik lemahnya, Pak, simbol-simbol kritisnya. Gitu. Dan saya selalu tidak bosan-bosan untuk sharing dengan teman-teman yang pemegang otoritas tata kelola terutama. Ya Pak Dwi. Nah ini yang sebenarnya kalau kita di hulu ya bisa menjaga betul ya. Kalau KSDA masih punya harapan lah saya. Tapi ketika bicara hutan produksi, hutan lindung yang ini oleh pemangkunya oleh KPH yang ini saya masih khawatir. Jadi ada setup besar untuk mengawasi ke sana, Pak. Kalau misalnya perdagangan, penangkapan ini sebenarnya belum seberapa, Pak. Ketika kawasan hutan dikonversi yang tidak tahu ujung-ujungnya, artinya rumahnya dihancurkan, ini yang betul-betul ini, yang betul-betul kita harus pahami betul. Jadi kita harus men-set up ya bagaimana tata ruang ini betul gitu loh. Pertama itu. Dan tadi patologi, tadi birokrasi itu, tadi dengan kalau saya gambarkan kode binernya untung dan tidak untung, aman dan tidak aman, ya itulah simbol-simbol dari hulu sampai hilirnya ini kita juga harus perkuat. Meskipun faktor pemukinya masih berat, Pak. Ya, tidak semua orang mengaku beriman, tapi kita dicoba lemah juga gitu loh. Ya ini itu Pak, itu kekuatannya ada itu karena mau digaji berapapun ya kalau dia nggak punya passion untuk saya pikir sistem rekrutmen yang penting gitu. Jadi ketika sistem rekrutmen kita menaruh orang ya di satu simbol-simbol kritis, benar-benar orang-orang yang punya passion lah. Kalau masalah gaji terus begini-begini ya memang ada pengaruhnya, tapi minimal itu harus diupayakan. Kemudian juga perbaikan tata kelola dan juga bagaimana sedikit mungkin celah-celah untuk mengarah ke sana itu. Nah, makanya sistem bangun sistem yang terintegrasi ini yang dari mulai misalnya ya, kalau konkretnya ya, kalau kita punya space ya, kawasan ya, kita inventarisasi semua yang ada di situ berapa. Jadi kita tidak pernah bicara dinamika populasi, nggak pernah nyampe itu. Kita punya banteng lah misalnya di Baluran kan, sampai nggak tahu berapa jumlahnya, berapa sekreasionya nggak tahu. Ya artinya saya nggak yakin itu. Ya, nggak yakin gitu ya, artinya bisa bicara dinamika populasi ya. Nah ini yang maksud saya, kita harus sistem rekrutmen ya, terus kemudian aturan-aturan yang bagaimana mengurangi celah-celah itu, Pak. Termasuk kalau di hilirnya jelas kita harus kolaborasi dengan banyak pihak karena kita urusannya dengan multi KL kan, kementerian dan lembaga yang lain gitu, yang punya kota sendiri. Dan saya yakin ke depan saya yakin semakin baik lah. Ketika ada kesadaran betapa nilainya demikian besar, saya yakin nanti. Tapi yang untuk sampai ke sana pun rasanya patologi ini ya pasti ada. Cuman bagaimana mereduce itu Pak. Itu Pak Iwan. Terima kasih.
Yeah, thank you, Pak. So in addition, Pak Iwan, so actually under UNDP CIWT project, so we interview some of the stakeholders in the main seaport, and they all of them, they mostly say that okay, the bureaucracy actually how to say make a difficulty for us to collaborate, to communicate with others, and then they create some like creative ways by informal communication, informal collaboration, even like joint patrol, but not in the strong how to say MOU, and it works, it works. Maybe because this the character of Indonesian, people prefer to do like informal things rather than writing in the documents, So that's why they still continue that, but in term of like the legality, and also in term of the like if we talk about the revealing criminal network, it means that we need to have a strategic and comprehensive analysis, for example. Then they start to learn about that, So I think both of the ways, informal and formal collaboration and bureaucracy, also bureaucracy, can can be managed in the same time, but in different ways.
Okay, thank you. We still have 3 minutes. Is there any other questions? No? If not, I would like to ask question. Well, well, it might be a little bit sensitive, but I would like to know your opinion or perspective about there is an telegram letter from the TNI commander about number STR 66 2023 signed in June 13 2003 about the prohibition for TNI soldiers to get involved in any endangered wildlife smuggling. Do you think this letter have a positive impact in reducing the wildlife threat of endangered species or not?
Yeah, I think the answer is yes and not. I mean that some of the soldiers they really how to say follow that telegram, So it means that they understand that if they try to trade a parrot, for example, from Eastern Indonesia, then it's not allowed by the government regulation. But some of them still, and even use the Navy warship, to transport parrots to, for example, like to Tanjung Priok. It happens, still happens. And even when the government, the Ministry of Environment and Forestry, try to confiscate that animals, the number of confiscated parrots reduce. From for example from 300, then they just give around 200. It happens. So I mean that the letters actually need to be followed up by strong monitoring in the ground. So because most of the corrupt military officers that deal with the wildlife trafficking actually in low level rank, less than lieutenant rank. But then they also say that okay, some of my money that get from wildlife trafficking, then I will give to my leaders. So this is the thing that actually become like spider webs. So we try to address one one point, but then will bring us to another and difficult points. So that's happened. So that's why I think MOF actually as a main ministry that work for the wildlife trafficking and also species can approach the TNI and also even like the national police, because some of them also the corrupt officer also deal with the wildlife trafficking, to have a strong commitment, not only by issuing letters but also monitor in the ground the traffickers that came from their institution.
Okay, thank you for Pak Nugroho Dwi Adiasto, and please give applause for all of us. Okay, thank you Pak Nugroho Dwi Adiasto. Now we are continue to our last topic. This last topic will be presented by Ibu Puspita Lisdianti, PhD from National Research and Innovation Agency or BRIN. Bu Puspita, are you ready? Good afternoon.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
You have 20 minutes for presentation, Bu
Okay.
Puspita.
Yeah.
Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much, Pak Moderator, and also committee that invite me in this meeting. I would like to share with you about the bioprospecting in the point of view of a developed country, or you can also see biopiracy point of view of a developing country. And then also I would like to share with you about the floracrats. It's the word from bureaucrats, and then change the bureau to the flora, that we manage the biodiversity in Indonesia. Okay, I'm Puspita Lisdianti. Actually, I'm a microbiologist and then also taxonomy of bacteria. I start with the quote of the day. There is a great amount of genetic information in the environment. If we know the current classification of life, yeah, there are three big domain, namely is bacteria, yeah, archaea, and then eukarya. And then if we see the microorganism is belong to the bacteria and archaea, and then plant, animal, fungi is belong to the eukarya. And then how much the number of its domain, you can see in the dot, yeah. Plant, the number of plant in the world is maybe 3 trillion, and then the number of species 500,000 species, and then uses by human is 5,000 species. And then also the number the large the second large life in the world is insect, crustacea, fish, amphibian, reptile, bird, and mammal. And then if we see the microorganism, the number of microorganism in the world is more than 5 nonillion, or 10 order 27. Yeah. However, the known species of microorganism is not more than 1 million. If we know the 1 gram of soil, it's contain 40 millions. It's like the number of people in one country. Yeah. And then the number of microorganism used by human, not more than 10,000 species. Microorganism is cosmopolitan, is alive in all of our in a body, in a gut, in our gut, in human microbiota, or fish, or wildlife. So many microbes there. They produce also biofilm. And then I would like to move the bioprospecting using microorganism. More than half a century ago, it's 1953, the compound known as vancomycin, you know, the antibiotic vancomycin, was purified from actinomycetes that isolated from a soil sample collected in the interior jungle of Borneo. The isolation was performed by an organic chemistry at Eli Lilly. This is a very big pharmaceutical company, now also still exists, which has begun a major program to discover new antimicrobial agents that was active against most gram-positive organisms, including Staphylococci. You know that when we in a pandemic COVID-19, vancomycin have been used to treat the lung, yeah, the pneumonia. The revenue of this antibiotic increase every year. That's the point. And then also this is a book from Andrew Gross that he he has a question. Yeah, the archipelago of Indonesia is a paradise for scientific exploration. Scientists from all over the world have made important discoveries in Indonesia. However, why do the names of Indonesian scientists themselves almost never appear in the historical record of science? Yeah, we understand that at the time when we colonized by Dutch, we only be assistant. We did not be a scientist or chef. And then we only follow that they would like to do. Yeah, that's the Andrew Gross uh, illustrated that Indonesian people uh, some kind of bureaucrat always do the same thing with a bureaucrat, or they said that he said that uh, we are a floracrat, yeah, from bureaucrat, change the bureau to flora. That's, I think, it's until now we still have the uh, yeah, we still have the floracrat until now. And then about the foreign visitor that in Indonesia, so many foreign research visitor went to Botanic Garden Buitenzorg. Yeah, and then for the microorganism, we have a really close history of microorganism. If you understand in the tissue culture using the agar, agar is come from Indonesia when in a Dutch colonial. And then Robert Koch developed the media using agar and then can isolate a lot of bacteria, yeah, some kind of anthrax also isolated using agar from seaweed in Indonesia. Yeah, another visitor, Professor Trup, that's a botanist and director of the Bogor Botanical Garden, also isolated a lot of fungi, mycorrhizal fungi, freshwater microalgae, plant disease bacteria. He has interesting in pathogenic bacteria in the plant. And then also Christian Eggman, you all known well. Actually, he is a visitor in the Drup laboratory in the Bogor Botanical Garden, and then he is a phytochemical investigation. He is a is built a pharmacological laboratory in Bogor Botanical Garden and established Indonesian University Medical Sciences. Yeah, we understand that the flow of from bioresources to market is need a long way, need more than 17 years, and then also we need a lot of money to make bio active compound to the market. And actually, we now go around in this area. Yeah. From screening, optimization, again, screening, optimization, and then we have output, patent, and registration or paper. But we still need to know to do the preclinical testing and then clinical testing for the commercialization and then go to the market. For screening from biological resources, need more than 100,000, more than that. And then maybe for the screening, we can get 10 active compound and selected 2 to 5 active compound, and then only one active compound can be go to the market. Yeah, this is a long way that we need to do together. And then also, we lack in the bioengineering. We have a lacking on education on the bioengineering. No, yeah, we have no curriculum on how to engineer the biological resources to be active compound. Yeah, actually, we all of Indonesian people, including me, went to abroad for the uh, further study. But in a developed country, they also did not teach us how to engineer. Uh, Usually, the bioengineering is like some kind of secret, yeah, in the company or in the university. Yeah, and then also the bioengineering also always have uh, the definition of the valley of death. Yeah, we cannot produce any bioactive compound, and then yeah, we just go to the valley, and then cannot up again. Okay. uh, Brain try to facilitate the how to manage the biological resources until in the to have an economic impact. We have we export on ex situ conservation. I think together with Ministry of Environment and Forestry. Yeah, we do a lot of expedition, and then we have also the specimen data, and then now we try to make a digital data of the specimen, all of the collection, and then also try to gather the data of omic, the spectrum data or RNA data, protein data, enzyme, and metabolite. And then also after that, we can utilize them and then have a economic impact. We need to work together to make it this one. And then how about the regulation of for using the biological resources that can utilize for all of us, for human being. Actually, there is a peraturan presiden Republik Indonesia number 1 in 2021, how to manage a microorganism. Microorganism must preserve and must hand over to the biological resource center. Yeah, we have already the regulation. We have also a lot of regulation on access and utilization of biological resources. We need to revise the natural resources and ecosystem uh, regulation. And then we also have a regulation on ratification of CBD, international agreement, patent, national system for research, development, science, and technology application. We also have a regulation on ratification of Cartagena Protocol, also ratification of Nagoya Protocol for access, and then fair and equitable sharing of benefit arising from their utilization. We also already ratified them, and others, a lot of already numbers of regulation that produced by us, yeah, by government. Uh, and then I would like to share with you also the clearance ethics and research permission. Also, we already have it for the social humaniora research, and then for the health research, for chemist research, there all already regulation how to access, and then how to have ethical to access our genetic resources. This is the flow, how to get the foreign research permission. Yeah, I think it's my opinion. The regulation is complete. The tools also complete. The guideline also complete. The documents also complete. I think we need to implement and then to collaborate together. Yeah. The next research topic that we have to hurry up in how to manage, to prevent the biopiracy. Now is a digital transformation in the field of biotechnology is now possible. Using a digital transformation, we know the better understanding about life phenomena, maximizing the utilization of biological function. We don't need the physical plant or animals, just the information, just the whole genome sequencing. Yeah. And then the cost of genome sequencing also decreased very much. In 1990, it's almost 45 trillion, but now we can get it 15 million per day. Yeah. Also, genome editing, the new thing that we can modify genome and then we can delete or insert the genome, and then we can have the new function of the gen of the organism. Yeah, we already have a lot of whole genome sequencing for a microorganism. We try to do, and then now we have almost more than 10 microbes from Indonesia that have been conduct the whole genome sequencing. How about the plant species? Yeah, a forest plant. In the world, there are about 60,000 species of forest plant. Completed and current genome sequencing project in the forestry are limited to about 25 species for just 4 of more than 100 species. Pine, spruce, firs, poplar, willows, eucalyptus, oaks, chestnut, beech. It's already done the whole genome sequencing. Compared to other whole genome sequencing program, for the forest plant is it's late behind. Yeah. The other one is increased very much, like tsunami. The number of whole genome sequencing now is like tsunami increase very much. Yeah. Yeah. This is the also the paper on the whole genome sequencing in the wild life. So many Escherichia coli, Enterococcus found in the wildlife, and then also non-invasive fecal, not only the animal itself, but also a fecal that in a wildlife, for fecal from wildlife, they also collected and then do the uh, whole genome sequencing. Why they do the fecal for the genome sequencing? Because the healthy life, the healthy human or healthy animals, uh, the the composition of microbiome of their fecal and then the sick one is different. That's why fecal is very important to know the personal medicine for human. Yeah. Okay. And then this is uh, my last slide. In Indonesia challenges in 2045. Currently I think the technology that we have is still low, but we rich in the diversity. And then is it possible if in the 2045 can we be a country that have the technology, high technology, and then rich in biodiversity. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Ibu Puspita Listianti. Okay, now we come to the discussion session. Is there any questions? No? Okay, maybe I have a question, Bu Puspita.
Yes.
Uh, is there any problem or barrier in Indonesia that held us or restrain or blocking us from discovering any potential microorganism and producing them into a medicine or a useful substance for human? Thank you.
Yeah, I think until now, I think we do one by one, not together. We do the small thing. Yeah, university do the different or do the same thing, but different people. Yeah, we did not collaborate with other. I think that's important. And then also, I think the knowledge that we got, it's almost on a screening and then optimization. Yeah. Uh, no curriculum. Yeah. I think for even in the forestry department, forestry faculty of forestry, I think it's also good if we can get the knowledge, the student can get the knowledge how to scaling up, how to make in a huge scale of new compound or something like that. Yeah, in the for industrial case.
Okay, thank you, Bu Puspita. It's
Yeah.
good insight for forestry student here. Okay, is there any other questions? No?
And
Okay,
then
so
also, I
yes,
think
please.
we
Oh,
need to, yeah,
yeah.
to learn
Uh,
about
for
genome.
human.
Even is a
Okay.
forestry student, we need to know about genome study.
Okay. Yes. Okay. We have one question. Yeah. Please.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Liz. My question is talking about the bioprospecting
Mhm.
related to biopiracy. Is
Mm.
there any attempt trial from private foreign private company to like patent some maybe product that originally from Indonesia.
Yeah.
If there is so, what is the strategy from BRIN to uh, prevent that attempt? Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Before CBD ratification or before CBD, so many. Yeah, we cannot count it well. As I mentioned about the antibiotic vancomycin, this is from the jungle of Borneo. Is they only they only took 1 gram of soils and then they isolate the microbes in USA. And then who is the who is uh, uh, took the sample is a missionaries, yeah. And then after CBD, I think uh, the industry has they have to change their uh, their way. And then in BRIN, so many foreign research permission from the outside, from the they would like to access the biological diversity in Indonesia, from plant, animal, and then also microbes. We have yeah, regulation, of course. Yeah, as I mentioned, actually, I think the regulation is already complete. Uh, and then we talk about the biopiracy. I think the case is decreased very much. And then always yeah, we make some confusing about the bioprospecting. Uh, yeah, just to know the potential of biological diversity. But after that, for the product, yeah, for the scaling up in industry, I think we need to make MTA, yeah, the level, different level of MTA. MTA for research, MTA for production, MTA for commercialization. We have to care about MTA.
Okay. Thank you, Bu Puspita Listianti. We
You're
have
welcome.
okay. Now we come to the end of our session. Before I close this session, I would like to say thank you to all our presenters and speaker and also the audience, and hopefully the presentation will be beneficial for everybody. Thank you all for your time and dedication, and give applause for all of us.
Thank you, Mr. Donan Satria Yuda, to guide us through the keynote and invited speaker session. And now we move to another important session, that is photo session. So to the excellencies and all of the participants are welcome to take a position in front of the room here. Yes. So I would like to invite all of us to take a position.
Maybe some of you All right, give applause to everyone. All right, Excellencies, distinguished guests, participants, and ladies and gentlemen. I think we have had a productive and inspiring time together, and this event about to come at the very end. We hope everyone found the presentation on this conference are informative and helpful.
We also remind you that the second day of International Symposium on Wildlife Biodiversity Conservation will be held tomorrow on 5th September 2023.
And ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the International Symposium of Wildlife Biodiversity Conservation, organizing committees would like to say thank you for your active participation today and have a great rest of your day. Also, we would like to thank all of the sponsors of this event, which are April Group, GF or Global Environmental Facility in partnership with UNDP, Pet and Mangrove Conservation Agency of the Republic of Indonesia, Borneo Nature Foundations, Taprobonica and the Journal of the Asians Biodiversity, Flora and Fauna International, Copenhagen Zoo, Kalika, Action Conservation Foundations, and also Pesona Indonesia Tours. We would like to thank and their unwavering support and dedication to the cause of wildlife biodiversity conservation have been instrumental in bringing us all here today. Thank you very much.